My brother looked my adopted daughter in the eye at Thanksgiving and told her the family heirlooms were for blood only. My parents just nodded. I smiled, pulled my funding for his business loan, and took her to Paris instead. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss the fallout. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The migraines had started 3 weeks ago, a dull, throbbing rhythm behind my left eye that seemed to sync with the frantic pace of my life. As a creative director for a global agency, November was always a battlefield, but this year had been particularly brutal. I was running on 4 hours of sleep, a cocktail of ibuprofen and caffeine, and the desperate hope that Thanksgiving at my parents' house would offer even a momentary reprieve. I should have known better. "Chloe, you look tired," my mother, Holly, said the moment I stepped through the oak door of my childhood home. She didn't offer a hug, just a critical scan of my face, her eyes lingering on the dark circles I hadn't bothered to conceal with concealer. "You're working too hard. It's aging you." "Hi, Mom. Happy Thanksgiving to you too," I said, forcing a smile as I ushered my 8-year-old daughter, Freya, inside. Freya was vibrating with energy. She had spent the entire car ride drawing a picture for her grandmother, a sprawling, colorful depiction of a turkey wearing a top hat. "Look, Grandma, I made this for you," she beamed, thrusting the paper forward. Holly took it with 2 fingers, as if it were slightly damp. "Oh, that's nice, dear. Put it on the side table. Not on the lace runner, please." I felt the first prick of irritation, sharp and hot, piercing through the fog of my headache. I placed a hand on Freya's shoulder, squeezing gently. "It's beautiful, Bug. Let's go put your coat away." The house smelled of roasted sage and decades of unspoken tension. My father, Simon, was in his usual spot in the recliner, watching football at a volume that shook the floorboards, seemingly oblivious to the world. And then there was Derek. My brother was already in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a glass of scotch in his hand, my father's expensive scotch, I noted, watching us with that familiar, lopsided smirk. Derek was 36, 3 years younger than me, but he carried himself with the unearned arrogance of a king in exile. "Well, if it isn't the corporate sellout," Derek drawled, raising his glass in a mock toast. "Finally decided to grace us with your presence? We were taking bets on whether you'd cancel last minute." "Good to see you too, Derek," I said, keeping my voice level. "How's the entrepreneurial journey going?" His smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. "It's going great, actually. Big things happening. Big things. Mom told you about the loan, right? We need to finalize the transfer on Monday if I'm going to secure the location." I didn't answer immediately. I just guided Freya toward the living room, feeling the weight of his expectation pressing down on me. That was the dynamic. Chloe works, Chloe saves, and Derek dreams. The explosion didn't happen then. It waited until dessert. We were seated around the mahogany dining table, the air thick with the humidity of the kitchen and the heaviness of the meal. Holly had brought out the good dessert plates, the ones with the gold rims that we weren't allowed to touch growing up. "I was going through the attic yesterday," Holly announced, wiping a crumb of pie from her lip. She looked at Derek, her eyes shining with a softness she never directed my way. "And I found your great-aunt Martha's silver locket, the one with the sapphire." Freya's head perked up. She loved jewelry, loved anything shiny and old. "Can I see it, Grandma?" she asked, her voice innocent and eager. Holly hesitated, her gaze darting to Simon, then to Derek. Derek let out a short, sharp laugh. He set his fork down with a clatter. "Freya, sweetie," he began, his tone dripping with a condescension so thick it was almost palpable. "That locket is a family heirloom." "I know," Freya said, smiling. "I'm family." The room went dead silent. The grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to tick louder, counting down the seconds to impact. Derek leaned forward, his elbows on the table. He looked directly at my daughter, my beautiful, kind, sensitive daughter who had been part of this family since she was 5 years old, and smirked. Well, not really, Derek said. I mean, technically, but heirlooms like that. They're for real grandkids, you know, blood. It's about the lineage, kiddo, nothing personal. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. I looked at my mother, waiting for her to reprimand him. Waiting for my father to look up from his pie and say, "That's enough, Derek." Holly just took a sip of her water. He didn't mean it to be mean, Chloe, she muttered, avoiding my eyes. It is traditional, you know. I looked at Freya. Her smile hadn't just faded, it had shattered. Her lower lip was trembling, her eyes wide and confused, filling with tears she was trying desperately not to spill. She looked at me, a silent plea for explanation. Am I not real? The headache that had been plaguing me for weeks vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. It was as if the world had slowed down. I saw Derek's smug satisfaction. I saw my parents' cowardly complicity. I saw the years of checks I had written, the crises I had solved, the excuses I had made. I didn't scream, I didn't flip the table. I stood up, walked over to Freya's chair, and wrapped my arms around her. I kissed the top of her head, inhaling the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "That's all right, sweetheart," I said, my voice steady, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I looked Derek dead in the eyes and smiled, a genuine, terrifyingly bright smile. "We don't need their old trinkets. We'll make our own traditions." "Whatever," Derek scoffed, leaning back. "You're always so dramatic." "Come on, Freya," I said, pulling her up. "Get your coat." "You're leaving?" Holly asked, finally looking alarmed. "We haven't had coffee." "No coffee for us," I said breezily. "Freya and I have packing to do." As we walked out, Derek called after me, "Don't forget to call the bank on Monday, Chloe. I need that wire by noon." I paused at the door, looking back at them one last time. A tableau of entitlement. "I won't forget," I said. And I meant it. I wouldn't forget a single thing. The drive home was agonizing. For the first 20 minutes, the only sound in the car was the hum of the tires on the asphalt and the occasional sniffle from the backseat. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, the leather creaking under the pressure of my fury. Every time I replayed Derek's voice, only real grandkids, a fresh wave of nausea rolled through me. "Mom," Freya's voice was small, barely a whisper from the darkness of the backseat. I adjusted the rearview mirror to catch her eyes. She was clutching her stuffed rabbit, the one she'd had since the day the adoption was finalized. "Yes, baby." Is Uncle Derek right?" she asked. "Is it because I don't look like you?" My heart broke into 1,000 jagged pieces. I pulled the car over onto the shoulder of the highway, threw it into park, and turned around in my seat. "Listen to me, Freya," I said, my voice fierce and trembling. "Uncle Derek is wrong. He is stupid and he is mean. You are my daughter. You are as real as the moon and the stars. You are the most important person in the world to me. Do you understand?" She nodded, wiping a tear away with the rabbit's ear. "Okay. We are going to have the best birthday ever for you next week," I promised. "Better than any dusty old locket, I promise." I got back on the road, but the rage didn't dissipate. It crystallized. It transformed from a hot, chaotic fire into a cold, hard weapon. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, then again, and again. I glanced down. It was Derek. "Derek, stop being a drama queen. Mom is crying. You made her feel bad." "Derek, seriously, don't leave us hanging on the loan. The seller is pushing me for the deposit." "Derek, just text me when you've cooled off." I didn't reply. I just stared at the road ahead, the red taillights of the cars in front of me blurring into streaks of light. They thought this was just another tantrum. They thought I would go home, stew for a few days, and then, like always, I would capitulate. I would answer the phone, listen to my mother's guilt trip. "He's your brother, Chloe, he just speaks without thinking," and I would write the check, because that's what I did. I was Chloe the fixer. Chloe the ATM. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten that while they were playing house with my money, I was the one who actually understood how leverage worked. And they had made the fatal mistake of attacking the only thing in the world I loved more than my peace: my child. When we finally got home, I tucked Freya into bed. She was exhausted, her eyes puffy. I read to her until her breathing deepened into sleep. I walked out of her room and went straight to my home office. I didn't turn on the overhead lights, just the small brass lamp on my desk. I opened my laptop and logged into my banking portal. There it was, the savings account labeled liquid assets. The money I had set aside over the last 6 months, $30,000. It was the money Derek was counting on. The money my mother had practically promised him, using my name. I opened a new tab, Expedia, Paris, first class. My finger hovered over the trackpad. Derek wanted to talk about real families. He wanted to talk about who deserved what? Fine. I typed in the dates. Departure 2 days from now. Return 4 days lat. There. I booked a suite at the Shangri-La, the one with the direct view of the Eiffel Tower. I booked a private dinner cruise on the Seine. I booked a personal shopper experience at Galeries Lafayette. The total came to $19,850. I looked at the number on the screen. It was an obscene amount of money for a weekend. It was the down payment on Derek's investment property. It was the roof repair my father needed. I clicked Confirm Booking. A savage satisfaction curled in my chest as the confirmation email pinged. I wasn't just taking a trip, I was firing a warning shot. I leaned back in my chair, the glow of the screen illuminating the dark room. Derek was expecting a wire transfer on Monday morning. He was probably already spending the money in his head, planning his victory lap. He had no idea that the Bank of Chloe was not only closed, but I had just burned the building to the ground. To understand why this moment was so nuclear, you have to understand the ecosystem of my family. For the last 15 years, I have been the silent engine keeping the SS dysfunction afloat. When I landed my first junior copywriter job at 22, I paid off my parents' credit card debt. When I got promoted to associate director at 28, I paid for Derek's second DUI lawyer. When I made creative director at 35, I paid for the remodel of my parents' kitchen because Holly said the old cabinets were depressing her. I did it because I wanted to be good. I wanted to be the dutiful daughter who made it, the one who lifted everyone else up. And then there was Freya. I adopted Freya 3 years ago as a single mother. The process was grueling, years of paperwork, background checks, and home visits. When the day finally came and I brought her home, my heart felt full for the first time in my life. My family's reaction, underwhelming. "Are you sure you want to do this alone?" my father, Simon, had asked, looking at my financial disclosures instead of the photos of the child. "It's going to be expensive. You won't have as much disposable income." "She's not a pet, Dad," I had snapped. "She's my daughter." Derek was worse. Derek treated Freya like a temporary guest. He never remembered her birthday. He never asked how school was. He only spoke to her when he needed to move her out of the way to get to the TV. Derek was a study in failed potential. In high school, he was the golden boy, quarterback, charming, handsome, but he peaked at 18. Since then, he had cycled through a dozen careers. He tried day trading, lost $10K of Simon's retirement. He tried flipping cars, got sued. He tried a dropshipping business, abandoned it after 3 months. Through it all, he remained my parents' favorite. He was the boy. He carried the name. He was just unlucky, according to Holly. This latest venture was his masterpiece. He wanted to buy a dilapidated duplex in the city, fix it up, and rent it out. He had no credit, no capital, and no experience in renovation. "But he has vision," Holly had pleaded with me 2 months ago. "Chloe, you have so much. You're sitting on that bonus. If you loan him the down payment, just a loan, he can finally get on his feet. He needs a win, please, for me." I had agreed. Reluctantly, exhaustedly, I had agreed. I told them I would wire the money the Monday after Thanksgiving. Now, sitting in my office in the dark, I thought about Derek's face at the dinner table. The way he had looked at Freya, a little girl who just wanted to see a necklace and decided to crush her spirit for sport. He didn't do it just because he was mean. He did it because he resented her. He resented that I spent money on her piano lessons. He resented that I bought her nice clothes. Every dollar I spent on Freya was a dollar he felt was being stolen from him. He truly believed he was entitled to the fruit of my labor because we shared DNA, while Freya, who shared my heart, deserved nothing. I pulled up Derek's contact on my phone. He had sent another text while I was booking the tickets. "Derek, look, I'm sorry if the joke didn't land, but seriously, confirm the time for the transfer. The realtor is a shark." I looked at the text and laughed, a dry, humorless sound. He wasn't sorry, he was worried about the cash. I didn't block him, not yet. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to wake up on Monday morning, check his account, and see zeros. But more than that, I wanted to investigate, because something about his confidence tonight had been off. He was too cocky. Derek usually begged for money. Tonight, he had demanded it. He acted like the loan was already a done deal, like the house was already his. Why was he so sure? I opened my email and dug up the business plan he had sent me weeks ago. It was a joke, 3 pages of typos and Zillow screenshots. But I looked closer at the address of the duplex he was buying. 1402 Maple Avenue. I copied the address and pasted it into the County P. Property Records database. It's amazing what you can find online if you know where to look. The owner listed wasn't a stranger. It was an LLC. H&S Properties LLC. I frowned. I searched the LLC filings. Members, Holly Miller, Simon Miller. My blood ran cold. My parents owned the duplex. They had bought it, likely with the money I had given them for their retirement fund or the kitchen remodel, years ago. Now, they were selling it to Derek, or rather, Derek was buying it from them using my money. It was a circle, a money-laundering circle of incompetence. I was effectively paying my parents for a house they already owned so they could give the house to Derek, and they would all pocket the cash. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. This wasn't just entitlement. This was fraud. They were conspiring to drain me dry, all while treating my daughter like an interloper. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the sleeping street. "Okay," I whispered to the reflection in the glass. "You want to play games? Let's play." The weekend was a blur of calculated duality. To Freya, I was the exciting, spontaneous mother who had turned a bad holiday into a magical adventure. We went shopping for Paris clothes, berets that were slightly too big, a trench coat that made her look like a miniature detective, and a new sketchbook with thick, cream-colored pages. "Are we really going, Mom?" she asked Saturday night, surrounded by piles of folded sweaters. "Like in a plane." "In a big plane," I confirmed, tucking a passport into my travel organizer. "And we're going to eat croissants until we pop." But while Freya slept, and while she watched cartoons, I was waging a quiet, digital war. I needed to understand the full scope of the trap I had almost walked into. The discovery of H&S Properties, LLC, was just the loose thread. I needed to pull it until the whole sweater unraveled. I spent Sunday morning with 3 monitors open on my desk. One for flight tracking, one for my banking, and one for the county clerk's public records portal. I pulled the deed history for 1402 Maple Avenue. My parents had bought it in 2008. That wasn't surprising. What was surprising was the lien history. There was a mechanics lien filed 3 years ago, unpaid contractor work. Satisfied. Then, a tax lien filed 6 months ago, $14,500 in unpaid property taxes. Active. And finally, a pre-foreclosure notice sent to my parents' home address just 4 weeks ago. I sat back, the coffee in my mug turning cold. The picture was coming into sharp, nauseating focus. This wasn't about Derek's vision. This wasn't about jump-starting his career. My parents were broke. They had mismanaged their rental property, ignored the taxes, and were now on the brink of losing it to the county. The plan was elegant in its slime. They couldn't ask me to pay their back taxes again. They knew I was tapped out on helping them with their mismanagement. So they concocted a story. Derek buys the house. I loan Derek the $50,000 for the down payment and renovations. Derek hands that money to the seller, my parents. My parents pay off the tax lien, keep the remaining $35,000, and keep the house in the family name. I would have been paying $50,000 for a house my family already owned, just to bail them out of debt I didn't know existed. And Derek, he was just the front man, the useful idiot, or maybe he knew. I pulled up my text thread with him. Derek, Saturday, 10:45 p.m. Hey, just checking in. Mom is super stressed. She says you haven't called. Everything good for Monday. Derek, Sunday, 9:00 a.m. Chloe. He knew, the urgency gave it away. If he were just buying a stranger's house, he'd be anxious about the seller. But he wasn't talking about a seller, he was talking about Mom being stressed. They were all in on it. The Thanksgiving insults, the exclusion of Freya, it was all a power play to make them feel superior to the person they were actively planning to defraud. They wanted my money, but they needed to remind themselves that I wasn't one of them, so they wouldn't feel guilty about taking it. I saved every PDF. The deed, the tax lien, the LLC registration. I compiled them into a folder labeled Project Paris. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my estate attorney, Marcus. It was Sunday, but Marcus owed me a favor. Chloe, everything okay? I need to change my will, Marcus, I said, my voice flat, and I need to remove the beneficiaries on my life insurance policy. Today. Today, that's extreme. Who are we removing? Holly Miller, Simon Miller, and Derek Miller, I said. Everything goes to Freya, held in a blind trust until she's 25. If something happens to me, I don't want them seeing a dime. Understood, Marcus said, the professional concern evident in his tone. I'll draft the addendums. You can e-sign them from the airport. Thank you. I hung up, I felt lighter. The tether was cut. Sue. End day night, as I zipped up our suitcases, my phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. Mom, a word that used to mean safety. Now it just meant obligation. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message. Her voice was thin, trembling with a manufactured frailty. Chloe, honey, please call us. Derek is beside himself. He's worried you're going to back out. You know how sensitive he is. We just want everyone to be happy. Call me. I didn't call. Instead, I sent a single text to Derek. Me, see you on the other side. Let him interpret that however he wanted. Monday morning arrived with the gray, steel skies of a November dawn, but inside the international terminal, everything was bright. Freya was vibrating with excitement, her nose pressed against the glass of the Delta Sky Club lounge, watching the massive jet's taxi on the runway. It's huge, she squealed. Mom, look at the wings. I see it, Bug, I smiled, sipping a mimosa. It was 10:00 a.m. The transfer deadline Derek had given me was noon. I checked my watch, 2 hours. We boarded the plane. First class was a realm of hushed tones and hot towels. Freya's eyes went wide when she saw the lie-flat pod. I get my own TV, she whispered, terrified to touch anything. You get your own everything, I assured her, helping her buckle in. As the plane pushed back from the gate, I turned my phone to airplane mode. But I didn't turn off the Wi-Fi. I wanted to be reachable. I wanted a front row seat to the meltdown. We were somewhere over the Atlantic, cruising at 35,000 feet, when the clock struck noon Eastern Standard Time. I was watching a movie, sipping sparkling water, when the first message came through via iMessage. Derek, hey, just checked the account. Money isn't there yet, did you send it? I waited. Derek, 12:05 p.m. Chloe, the wire cutoff is soon. The realtor is blowing up my phone. Derek, 12:10 p.m. Pick up the phone. Holly, 12:15 p.m. Chloe, Derek says the money hasn't arrived. Is there a bank error? Call us immediately. I paused the movie. I looked over at Freya. She was fast asleep, wrapped in a duvet, clutching her stuffed rabbit. She looked peaceful, safe, real. I opened the chat with Derek. Me, there is no bank error. 3 dots appeared instantly. He was typing. Derek, what? What does that mean? Just send the confirmation number. Me, it means I didn't send it, and I'm not going to. Derek, what? Are you insane? You promised, you can't just back out now. The deal falls through if I don't fund today. Me, then I guess the deal falls through. Derek, you selfish bitch, you can't do this. Mom and Dad are counting on this. There it was, the slip. Me, oh, why are Mom and Dad counting on it? I thought this was your investment, Derek. The typing stopped. A long pause. He realized he'd stepped on a landmine. Derek, they're counting on me succeeding. They want me to do well. Why are you doing this? Is this about the Thanksgiving joke? Are you seriously destroying my future over a joke? Me, it wasn't a joke. It was a statement of values. You said Freya isn't real family. You said family is about blood. Well, I've decided to respect your views. Derek, what the hell are you talking about? Me, I'm investing my money in my real family. Freya and I are currently over the Atlantic Ocean. We're going to Paris for her birthday. The hotel's suite alone cost about half of your down payment. The rest? Well, let's just say the family bank is permanently closed. My phone practically vibrated out of my hand with the influx of messages. Derek, you spent the money on a vacation. Derek, I'm going to kill you. You ruined everything. Holly, Chloe, please tell me you're joking. You are not in Paris. Turn the car around and come home. We can fix this. I decided to twist the knife. Me, I'm not joking. And Mom, I know about the tax lien. Silence, absolute digital silence. For 5 minutes, no one typed, no one called. Then a text from my father, Simon, the man who rarely texted anyone. Simon, you are making a mistake, Chloe. You are abandoning your family. Me, no, Dad, I'm protecting it. I put the phone face down on the tray table. The stewardess walked by, offering a warm cookie. Yes, please, I said, smiling. The chocolate was warm and gooey. It tasted like victory. We landed in Paris at 8:00 a.m. local time. The city was waking up, a wash of gray slate roofs and golden streetlights battling the morning fog. By the time we checked into the Shangri-La, my phone was a war zone. Derek had left 14 voicemails. I listened to the first one on speaker while I unpacked Freya's clothes. You think you're so smart? You think you can just leave us high and dry? You promised that money, Chloe. That's a verbal contract. I'll sue you. I swear to God, I'll sue you. I laughed, sue me. With what lawyer? With what retainer? But the threats were escalating. He wasn't just mad, he was desperate. The tax lien deadline must be imminent. If they didn't pay the county soon, the house, 1402 Maple Avenue, would go to auction. They weren't losing a potential investment. They were losing an asset they had likely borrowed against. I decided it was time to go public. My family thrived in the shadows. They relied on the image of the perfect suburban family, the hardworking parents, the successful daughter, the son who was finding his way. They hated scrutiny. I opened Instagram. I selected a photo I had taken on the plane, Freya looking out the window, the clouds beneath her, a glass of sparkling apple juice in her hand. I wrote the caption carefully. My brother told my daughter she wasn't real family because she's adopted. He said the family heirlooms were for blood only. So, we decided to make our own traditions. Paris for her 9th birthday. No toxicity, no conditions, just us. Paris mother-daughter new traditions, family is love. I hit post. I had a modest following, mostly colleagues in the ad industry, college friends, and extended family. But in my small hometown circle, I was well known. Within an hour, the comments started rolling in. OMG Chloe, did he really say that? That's horrific. Freya is an angel, hope you two have the best time. Wow, toxic much? Good for you for walking away. Then the flying monkeys arrived. My Aunt Linda, Holly's sister, commented, "Air dirty laundry much? Family matters should stay private, Chloe. Your mother is devastated." I didn't delete it, I let it sit there. Then my phone rang. It was Holly again. I answered this time. I was standing on the balcony of our suite, the Eiffel Tower looming in the distance, iron and lace against the sky. "Hello, Mother." "Take it down," Holly hissed. Her voice was venomous, stripped of the confused old lady act she usually played. "Take that post down right now. Mrs. Gable from church just called me asking if Derek is a bigot." "Is he?" I asked, examining a chipped fingernail. "He certainly sounded like one at Thanksgiving." "He was stressed," she shouted. "He is about to lose everything because of you. Do you know what you've done? The county is going to seize the rental property." "I know," I said calmly. "I saw the tax liens. $14,500. You haven't paid taxes in 2 years, Mom. Where did the rent money go?" "That's none of your business." "It became my business when you tried to trick me into paying it off," I snapped, my voice hardening. "You tried to sell me a house you already own, using Derek as a shield to cover your own financial mess. That's fraud, Mom. Do you want me to post the property records next? I have the PDFs right here on my phone. H&S Properties, LLC? Want me to tag Mrs. Gable?" There was a choking sound on the other end. "You wouldn't." "Try me," I said. "You stood by and watched your son torment my daughter. You let him tell her she wasn't real. You chose him. You chose the lie. Now you can live with it." "He's your brother," she wailed, switching tactics to tears. "He's blood." "And Freya is my daughter," I said. "And since you don't consider her family, you don't consider me family either, because we are a package deal." "Chloe, please," she sobbed, the desperation real this time. "We'll lose the income. Dad's pension isn't enough." "Then maybe Derek should get a job," I suggested. "I hear Starbucks is hiring. They have great benefits." "He can't work a service job. He has potential." "Then he has potential to be homeless," I said. "Do not call me again on this trip. If you do, or if Derek sends one more threat, I release the tax documents to the entire family group chat. Cousins, uncles, everyone. I will show them exactly how you've been managing your money." I hung up. My hands were trembling, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally saying the words I had swallowed for 20 years. Freya walked out onto the balcony, holding a croissant. "Mom, are you okay?" I looked at her. The wind was catching her hair. She looked happy, unburdened. "I'm better than okay, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down to hug her. "I'm free." But the war wasn't quite over. As we left the hotel to go to the Louvre, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It wasn't from my family. It was from a generic Gmail account, Derek Miller, business@gmail.com. Subject, final warning. "Body, you think you can blackmail Mom? I'm going to tell everyone about the time you were in rehab in college. I'll ruin your career. Send the money by tomorrow, or I post everything." I stared at the screen. Rehab? I had spent 3 weeks in a wellness center for exhaustion and anxiety during my senior year of college, anxiety caused mostly by their pressure to succeed. I hadn't touched a drug in my life, but he would spin it. He would lie. He was trying to nuke my professional reputation. I felt a cold, sharp smile spread across my face. "Oh, Derek," I whispered, "you really shouldn't have done that." He had just given me the piece of ammunition I needed. He had moved from fraud to extortion, and he had done it in writing. I stared at the email from Derek for a long time. The screen of my phone was the only light in the darkened hotel room, casting a ghostly blue glow over the duvet where Freya was sleeping. "I'll ruin your careers." It was a clumsy threat, written by a desperate man who had never faced a consequence he couldn't whine his way out of, but it was also a crossing of the Rubicon. Up until this moment, this had been a family squabble, a messy disagreement about money and manners. Now, it was a felony. I didn't reply to him. I didn't give him the satisfaction of seeing my fear. Instead, I opened my laptop and dialed Marcus. It was 2:00 a.m. in New York, but Marcus was a partner at a firm that billed by the heartbeat. He answered on the second ring. "Chloe, it's the middle of the night. Please tell me you aren't in jail." "No," I said, my voice eerily calm. "But my brother might be soon. I just forwarded you an email, Marcus. I need you to read it right now." I heard the rustle of sheets, the click of a bedside lamp, and then the tap of keyboard keys. A few moments of silence stretched between us, heavy and thick. "Wow," Marcus said finally. "Extortion, classy guy. He's explicitly demanding money in exchange for silence regarding. What exactly?" "The rehab thing." "I took 3 weeks off senior year for exhaustion," I explained, rubbing my temples. "He's going to spin it as a drug problem. I work in advertising, Marcus. Clients are fickle. If a rumor starts that I'm unstable or using, I lose accounts. He knows that." "Okay," Marcus said, his tone shifting from sleepy friend to shark attorney. "Here is what we are going to do. I am going to draft a response. Not from you, but from my firm. We are going to explicitly outline the federal statutes regarding extortion and blackmail. We are going to attach the PDF of this email, and we are going to copy your parents." "Do it," I said. "But I need one more thing. I need you to pull the public foreclosure records for 1402 Maple Avenue and attach them to the letter. I want it on the record that his desperation for money is due to their fraud, not my debt." "Scorched earth?" Marcus asked. "Scorched earth," I confirmed. "And Marcus, draft a restraining order for me and Freya. If he comes near us when we land, I want him arrested." "Consider it done. Go enjoy Paris, Chloe. I'll handle the garbage." I hung up, but I didn't go back to sleep. I sat by the window, watching the lights of Paris twinkle. I felt a strange sense of mourning, not for the relationship that had been dead for a long time, but for the illusion of it. I was grieving the family I wished I had, the one that would have protected Freya, not the one that tried to sell her out for a duplex. The next evening was my planned crescendo. Dinner at Le Jules Verne, the restaurant inside the Eiffel Tower. I dressed Freya in a navy velvet dress with a white collar. She looked like a princess. I wore a black silk gown that made me feel like armor. The elevator ride up the tower was magical. The city expanded beneath us, a grid of gold and shadow. Freya pressed her face to the glass, gasping as the cars turned into ants and the Seine turned into a ribbon of black silk. "Are we really eating inside the tower?" she whispered. "We are," I said. We were seated at a window table. The service was impeccable, but as the waiter poured my wine, my phone, which I had placed face down on the table, began to buzz. It wasn't a text, it was a vibration that didn't stop. A call, then another, then a flood of notifications. I flipped it over. My Aunt Linda, my cousin Sarah, my dad, Derek. I unlocked the screen. Derek had posted. He hadn't waited for the money, he had panicked. On Facebook, visible to our entire hometown, he had written, "Sad to see my sister Chloe completely lose her way. Drugs and money really change people. She's abandoned her family in a time of crisis to go party in Europe. Pray for her." It was vague enough to be legally slippery, but specific enough to be damaging. The comments were already flooding in. "Oh no, is she okay? I always knew she worked too hard. Praying for you all." My blood boiled. It was a heat so intense I thought the glass in my hand would shatter. He was playing the victim. He was using my addiction narrative to cover his own failure. "Mom," Freya asked, her fork hovering halfway to her mouth, "you look scary." I looked at her. I softened my eyes, forcing a smile. "I'm sorry, Bug, just work stuff, everything is fine." "Is it Uncle Derek?" she asked perceptively. I took a deep breath. "Yes, but I'm going to fix it, right now." I didn't yell. I didn't comment on his post. I opened the family reunion WhatsApp group. It included everyone, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, even the grandmother who lived in Florida. 30 people. The entire court of public opinion. I attached 3 files. The screenshot of the extortion email, clearly showing his address and the threat, "Send the money or I ruin your career." The tax lien document for 1402 Maple Avenue, showing the $14,500 debt and my parents' names. The LLC registration, proving my parents owned the house Derek was buying. Then I typed a message. My hands were steady. Since Derek decided to post about truth on Facebook, I think it's time everyone had the full context. Derek isn't asking for prayers, he's asking for money. Specifically, he tried to trick me into giving him $50,000 to buy a house Mom and Dad already owned to pay off their tax debts. When I refused to participate in fraud, he threatened to spread lies about me to ruin my job. Here is the proof. If anyone else in this family wants to call me selfish, please read the attached court documents first. Also, Marcus from my legal team has just filed a police report for extortion. Please direct all future communication to him. I hit send. I watched the checkmarks turn blue, read by everyone. Then I opened Facebook. I took a screenshot of the WhatsApp message and the documents, and I posted it as a comment directly under Derek's status. "Here's the receipt, Derek. Lawyer up." I set the phone down. "Okay," I said to Freya, picking up my menu. "I think I'm going to have the lobster. What about you?" The phone didn't just buzz this time. It lit up like a disco ball. The screen flashed with incoming calls from numbers I hadn't spoken to in years. I reached out, held the power button, and slid the bar to off. The screen went black. "Mom," Freya whispered, "did you win?" I looked out at the lights of Paris, stretching to the horizon. I thought about the poison that had been seeping into my life for years, the guilt, the obligation, the subtle digs at my daughter. I thought about Derek's smirk. I thought about my mother's silence. And then I looked at Freya, who was safe, loved, and currently eyeing a basket of warm bread. "Yes, baby," I said, clinking my glass against her juice cup. "I won." We stayed in Paris for 2 more days. We ate crepes in the Latin Quarter. We saw the Mona Lisa. Freya was unimpressed by how small she was. We bought a painting from a street artist along the Seine. When we landed back in the States, the silence from my family was deafening. But it wasn't the silence of being ignored. It was the silence of a crater after the bomb has gone off. Marcus met us at the airport, not because he had to, but because he's a good friend. He handed me a thick manila envelope. "Welcome back," he said, taking my luggage cart. "Restraining order was granted temporarily. Hearing is in 2 weeks. Derek hasn't contested it." "And the parents?" I asked, buckling Freya into her booster seat. "Quiet," Marcus said. "I think you shamed them into oblivion. Your Aunt Linda called my office, actually. She wanted to know if the tax lien thing was real. When I told her it was public record, she apparently hung up and called your mother screaming. Rumor has it the family reunion chat is vibrant right now, and not in your brother's favor." We drove home. My house, a house I bought with my own money in my own name, felt different when we walked in. It felt like a fortress. 2 weeks later, the dust settled, revealing the new landscape of my life. The rental property at 1402 Maple Avenue was seized by the county. My parents couldn't come up with the cash in time, and with the Chloe bailout off the table, the house of cards collapsed. They lost the asset. They lost the income. Derek, facing a potential criminal investigation for the extortion attempt, which I ultimately chose not to press charges on, provided he signed a strict no-contact agreement, had to move back into my parents' basement. The entrepreneur was now working shifts at a local warehouse, a job arranged by an uncle who was tired of his excuses. I didn't see them for Christmas. Instead, Freya and I started our new tradition. On Christmas Eve, we didn't go to the house with the lace runners and the judgment. We didn't sit through a dinner where my daughter was ignored. We ordered an obscene amount of sushi. We built a fort in the living room out of blankets and pillows. We wore matching pajamas with cartoon penguins on them. "This is the best Christmas ever," Freya mumbled around a mouthful of tempura, her legs tangled in the duvet. I looked at the mantelpiece. The center spot, where I used to keep a framed photo of my whole family, me, Derek, Mom, Dad, was empty. I reached into my bag and pulled out the painting we had bought in Paris. It was a simple watercolor of the Eiffel Tower, with two small figures standing at the base, holding hands. I placed it in the frame. "Mom," Freya asked, are we lonely?" She was looking at the empty chairs at the dining table, the quiet of the house. I went over to her and pulled her into my lap. She was Getting big, her legs lanky, but she still fit. "No, sweetheart," I said, resting my chin on her head. "We aren't lonely, we're peaceful." She looked at the painting on the mantel. "And we're real family, right?" "The realist," I said. "Family isn't about whose blood you have, Freya. It's about who bleeds for you. It's about who shows up. And we show up for each other." She smiled, satisfied with that answer, and turned back to the TV. I sipped my wine and looked at the phone on the coffee table. It was silent, no demands, no guilt trips, no drama. It turns out, the most expensive trip of my life, $20,000 for a weekend in Paris, wasn't just a vacation. It was the price of admission to a new life. And looking at my daughter's happy face, illuminated by the Christmas tree lights, I knew one thing for certain. It was a bargain.